All right. I think this thing is on. It's recording. Welcome to the Pump Take Sports Show. We're going to be doing an NBA draft special today where we go through all the 30 picks of the first round. With me, I have my friends Marcus, Kale, Lucas, and Aiden. And we're going to be running through the whole first round for you guys. So we're going to go one by one. All of us have been assigned about 5 picks of the first round, which we're going to give a little analysis on. And then we're going to hand it to the next guy and then the next guy. And as we go through, we'll finish the first round. And at the very end, we'll do a little talking about some NBA trade rumors, things that have happened, deadline stuff. And so, yeah, we'll hop right into it. With the first pick, Aiden Sneed is analyzing
Anthony Edwards to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Number 1 pick, yeah. To me, if Minnesota stayed at number 1 and didn't trade down like they wanted to, this was always the pick that made the most sense for them. Obviously, it creates a franchise trio with D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns, but also I think he's a particularly really nice fit with those two. Obviously, he's an awesome athlete, super strong, good shot creator, high upside, everything. And he has high upside as a defender too. But I think he always would have fit best beside another guard that can play make and take advantage of having Edwards in the backcourt with him, since he himself isn't really the best playmaker. And I think he definitely gets that with D'Lo, who's also a pure shooter, which Edwards isn't either. So I think with him, it's a really great fit. And also, depending on how Rubio mixes in, I think that's a nice combo as well. I don't really know if he's going to stay on the Timberwolves or what, but I also thought that trade was interesting because Rubio was drafted by the Timberwolves, which I didn't realize at first when that first went through. But that's just kind of an interesting side note. But anyway, of course, you have Cat and you keep surrounding him with good players, and Edwards can make an immediate impact. But also he hasn't reached the ceiling yet. So there's something to develop there. But yeah, to kind of wrap up, like I said, I think as long as the Timberwolves stayed in the first pick, this was the pick that made the most sense. Edwards has his inconsistencies right now, but I think you put him next to 2 star players. They can help cover up those deficiencies while he develops. And I think he can make an impact right away. I remember watching one game that he was playing against Florida, and he was absolutely snapping, and he just looked NBA ready there. I think he just needs to hammer out those inconsistencies, and he'll get on the floor and contribute right away. I mean, it's going to be tough for the Timberwolves to make the playoffs this year since the West has really only gotten healthier and better. But I'm just excited to see how the group plays together.
Me too.
And I think for the future, it'll just be good to get them together this year and see how they can all play together.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's Anthony Edwards for me.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, he's the best fit for them out of the 3, absolutely. Which were the guys
out of the top 3, yeah.
So yeah, I think it was a home run pick. As long as he doesn't fall out of love with the game of basketball.
Might go to the Vikings.
Yeah. As long as
we'd have some problems if he went to the Vikings. Let me tell you.
The Giants could use him, to be honest.
They could. They could.
Yeah, my Chiefs might try to just sign him to our practice squad.
Yeah, big potential guy. I like the first pick. It makes sense even after all like the football stuff and not loving the game of basketball comes out, which is weird. Huge potential guy in the NBA. Obviously, I feel like he'll develop a love for the game. But another big potential guy, 2nd overall pick. The Warriors, they took the obvious choice. Makes sense. They took James Wiseman, big center, 7'1". Will also make a immediate impact to the team, in my opinion. He was a Gatorade National Player of the League, clearly physical gifted, a rim runner, a rebounder. He can post up, and he could definitely develop into an elite rim protector, which is something Golden State, could definitely use at center. And it's interesting because Golden State have never really went this route. They've always kind of just picked up like a crappy center. They won with McGee, they won with Zaza, and they won with Bogut. Like those are kind of nobody centers. And now they actually are drafting a center that could be good for the future, which is very interesting for Golden State. So I mean, it's interesting with the top, like hopefully Thompson, Clay is okay too, because if Wiseman actually is able to produce and be a good center, which I think he will for their team, and Thompson's injury comes out as being less severe than it could be, like Golden State are in the run for the finals this year with that center pick, which I really, I really like. Yeah, I think he's just a good overall player for the team. He has so much potential to develop. He's so athletically gifted and talented. And yeah, I like the pick for Golden State. And I think that this year, if they don't get fucked by injuries like, Curry, Thompson, whatever, I mean, Curry's fine, but, he usually gets injured. Then, yeah, I think Golden State, scary looking team once again.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, as we were watching the draft, I was even saying, like, I think James Wiseman was the obvious pick for them at 2. Because, like, all the other players that were in that top 1 to like 5 range, they kind of already have that, and they can just fill out that position internally. But having that elite center, that elite presence just in the paint on the offensive and defensive end of the floor is something that, like you said, they've never really had before. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that dynamic kind of plays out with their guard situation, and how their system sort of changes around James Wiseman as he develops his career and becomes better in Golden State.
Absolutely. If I can add something too, it's kind of a little bit forgotten. It's all talked about the big 3, but James Wiseman was the undisputed number 1 overall pick for a long time. And so
national player of the league.
Yeah, obviously it's not crazy to get a guy who's supposed to go 1 at 2, but still, you're getting value there. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the guy has Embiid potential. He's just a monster. Great pick for Golden State.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you guys are saying. I'll just echo that. It's the best. It's the best fit out of the top 3. No question, in my opinion. I did want to say just really quick, I thought it was interesting how in the broadcast they were talking about Golden State potentially going with LaMelo because of Clay's injury.
Yeah.
To me, that just didn't really that never made sense to me, just because that's not how smart organizations really draft. They don't just immediately same day react to an injury, just take a player of the same position. Yeah. And I also thought, just even taking Clay's injury out of the picture, I never really saw the next sort of and I think we are moving towards this with Golden State, like what's next for Golden State. I think it's just sort of interesting because I never really saw them as going like, oh, we've been dominating with these 2 guards for so long. Let's just draft a guard and we'll just develop him as we potentially phase these 2 out. I never really saw that as what they're doing. So I as what they would do. So I like that they're taking this young center first before they're sort of moving on. Because he had, like Marco was saying, he has potential now to fit in with everybody there, but also for the future, I think he's an interesting building block when those guys.
Oh, Sneed, you muted your mic. Yeah, just like kind of what you were just saying, like about them transitioning into the next stage of their team. And I think that that's something that is really interesting and comes into play with the number 3 pick with the Charlotte Hornets, where they took LaMelo Ball. Like, this was sort of an obvious pick for me, because the Hornets, those 3 guys were always going to be the top 3, and the Hornets just took the best player available. LaMelo Ball, he's a gifted playmaker. He has great court vision, excellent passer and touch around the rim with a high IQ and feel for the game. And I just think that this is the type of player that the Hornets really needed. The current iteration of their team, they had players like Devontae Graham and they had PJ Washington, but they didn't really have that dynamic star player that in the NBA you need to make your team competitive. And I think that despite the flaws with LaMelo Ball and there's questions about his maturity and his defense, but there's questions with all of these top prospects in this draft. And I think for a team in the situation of the Hornets, it was important for them to just move to the next stage of their franchise and try to take the guy who can be that player for them. And it's going to work out for them, or it could not work out. But either way, I think it was a great pick because they took the chance to move in the right direction.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think, there's not much else you can say about that. He is the savior of Charlotte. I've been seeing things about that. And they needed a savior. They needed a guy that was going to lead that team into the next phase of Charlotte basketball. And since Kemba left, they haven't found that guy yet. And, I also think, just to quickly throw this in before we move to the fourth pick, if Terry Rozier can't play with LaMelo Ball, get rid of Terry Rozier.
Agreed.
Exactly. Terry Rozier is not any sort of part of your future. Devontae Graham and LaMelo Ball should be the guards of your future, primarily being LaMelo Ball being the main option on that team. But if Terry Rozier doesn't want to go to a six-man position, get rid of him. He's not worth clogging up your system there. So
Also, the best part about this pick has yet to been said. LeVar versus Jordan one-on-one.
Finally, we'll actually get to see.
I got money on LeVar. Like, Jordan's shit. Come on. LeVar Ball for the win.
LeVar Ball playing basketball leads me into my next thing with questionable decisions. The Chicago Bulls at number 4. I'm calling it the Cameron Johnson pick of 2020. This is Patrick Williams from Florida State. He is a power forward. He's 6'8", 225. He gets a lot of Paul Millsap comparisons from guys who have analyzed his game. The pros of the Patrick Williams pick are that he's the youngest player in the draft. The guy just turned 19 years old. He's strong. He's explosive. He's skilled from the three-point line. He's a long-term investment, though. Like, the Bulls have invested in him because I feel like the Bulls think that they have time to invest in him. That's a pro of drafting him. They think that all their guys are young, which they are, other than Olavine's kind of young, but they have time to build, right? This is what they see. And so in their eyes, a pro of Patrick Williams is they have the time to develop him into what they think he could be. And lastly, he was excellent in high school. He was an excellent player. But this pick doesn't go without its fair share of cons as well. The biggest one being that Patrick Williams didn't actually start at Florida State, which is a big red flag. I mean, he played off the bench. That really limits your experience in like kind of pressure situations and game situations. He has very limited experience. And also his stats don't jump off the page to you. Like 9 points per game. That's not jumping off the page for a top 5 pick. You know, I think when you're picking a top 5 pick, you want to pick a guy that's kind of going to lead your franchise into the next phase of basketball, or a guy that's going to immediately contribute, similar to like what Aiden was saying about the Anthony Edwards pick. Like, when you're picking in the top 5, get a guy that's going to contribute right away, not a long-term project. When you need to start winning some basketball games here before, Markkanen's contract comes up and Wendell Carter needs to get paid. You got to start winning some basketball games. And I really don't think Patrick Williams was the pick to do that. So I think it was the first bad pick of the draft. I see the pros of drafting him, but in my opinion, there were better players on the board.
Agreed.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with your point there, especially about the Bulls thinking that they have this time. It's interesting because you contrast it with the Hornets pick, and I think that's an example of where shooting for the stars really makes a lot of sense for that team. But then you look at the Bulls, and it's just kind of like not even just because it's a reach, but just because of the philosophical sort of view behind making this pick. It just doesn't really make sense. Like you were saying, they're going to have to pay some of these guys. Like, is Zach LaVine going to be happy here long term? I don't know. It just is an uninspiring pick to make in the top 4 when you're the Chicago Bulls. And the East is there to, it's open enough that a team like the Bulls can make the playoffs. And this pick doesn't really, is not really a stepping stone for doing that at all to me. So
if they were really in on
the worst.
They were really in on this Patrick Williams guy, they could have likely traded down and acquired more value for taking him, because like I think he was like more likely a mid first round type of guy, or even possibly lower. So to reach and waste such a valuable pick like that seems like a little bit of a wasted opportunity for the Bulls.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just to add to that as well about like what you guys were saying, it's like Patrick Williams, like he's going to be so much more of a developmental piece. And about what Aiden was saying, like you don't know if like the current pieces that you have on your team, like the Bulls have had pieces like Zach LaVine, for example, for a while. So like as he approaches the end of his contract and starts to get a little bit older, you don't know, like if you don't start winning games in like a not very good Eastern Conference, like how long you're going to have those assets for. And then like by the time that like the Zach LaVine time in Chicago expires, like was Patrick Williams really the pick that once those guys possibly head out because you haven't been competing, is Patrick Williams really going to be the guy that you're like wanting to primarily build your franchise around? And I don't think he is. I just think with a top 5 pick, you need to like Aiden was saying, if you're a team like the Bulls who've like they've been struggling in like mediocrity or just being straight up bad for a very long time, you need to kind of take a player that's going to like it's gonna push your franchise toward being better. Just
like
by
take
themselves.
a risk.
Yeah,
take a risk and send it. Like there's no, excuse my frat boy language, but there's literally no like reason to not try to get something special.
Completely agree.
Yeah. Who's doing 5?
All right. So for 5, we've got the Cleveland Cavaliers taking Isaac Okoro. He's a 6'6" small forward out of Auburn. I like this pick. Okoro is probably the best wing available in this draft and addresses the Cavs' need for defensive prowess. The Cavs were one of the worst, if not the worst, defensive teams in the league over the past few seasons, and their previous 2 picks of Sexton and Garland didn't really address that need as much. They're more offensively minded guards. So Okoro will easily slot into the lineup. I think he'll slot in ahead of Osman potentially for a few games in his first season or permanently going forward. And he'll be a good complement, I think, to the backcourt of Sexton and Garland in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think he plays he fits in very nicely, kind of just in between kind of where Love and Drummond are, and then Sexton and Garland. He just slots very nicely in there. He's a great player at number 5. I like this pick for Cleveland. I don't think any of the other guys that were in this area, maybe other than the guy that I'm going to talk about in a couple picks, could have really fit in better there for them. So I think he was a good fit and also the best player available at this spot. So I think that was worked out well for Cleveland, and it was a smart pick, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
I agree that it was a great pick, and I really liked the pick for Cleveland just because of, like you guys said before, how he fits in with Sexton and Garland. But my one issue with it is that I don't know if he was necessarily the best player available. I think like taking a guy like Deniev Avdija, for example, would have been an excellent pick for them. But other than that, it's like you can't really complain. Like he's fantastic defensive player. Like he can complement the perimeter and the inside scoring in kind of conjunction with Colin Sexton and Darius Garland. And
I think they were really
good pick.
I think they were really like zeroing in on his defensive game, I think, with this pick, because that's been one of their biggest issues, Cleveland's biggest issues last year and the previous seasons as well. He's got a really strong 3-and-D game, which is something that not a lot of their players bring to the table at this point. So I think he may not have been, Avdija would have been a good pick as well, I agree, but I think Isaac Okoro kind of plays a style of game that the Cleveland Cavaliers were coveting more.
Helps fill their weaknesses.
This pick. Right.
Yeah. I really agree with Lucas about the defensive aspect of it. Like that, to me, this is the 100% right pick. The only question I have is it's not with this pick at all. I think this was the right move. It's just the rest of the roster and how he fits in. Like I agree, he like in terms of everything else, he's a necessary piece. But you just look at like Sexton and Garland, like I don't know, like I don't really get what they're doing with that. Like they both want the ball. You have, they have all these bigs on the team that they're going to be like, they're basically going to be forced to be playing at the same time unless they find a way to trade some of them, and they're just going to be clogging up the paint. Like they're going to be asking Okoro to guard the other team's best player pretty much right away because they have no one else to do that. I don't know. It's a great pick, moving in the right direction, but I don't know. Everything else that the Cavs are doing, I don't like. So hopefully they figure some of that out.
They're definitely going to have to make some more moves. The Cavs are a work in progress, that's for sure. I don't think anyone can deny that. Yeah.
Step in the right direction, though. Step in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly.
Number 6.
That's me. Okay, so Onyeka Okongwu goes to the Atlanta Hawks at number 6. I love this player. Coming out of UFC, my instant reaction was that I just love this pick. because I'm thinking in a vacuum, it's a great fit. It gives Trae Young another great pick and roll partner. I think he's going to be awesome around the rim, catching inside passes from Trae. His interior scoring is legit. He's got a lot of good post moves, but he's also a really good passer for his position himself too. So that's going to be really nice with those young wings with Herter and Hunter and even Reddish, just making outlet passes. I think this team is going to be really dangerous in the future. I know we don't have too many Trae Young fans in here, I don't think. But you're okay. So we got a couple. But yeah, I think they're going to be good for the future. I think he's just an amazing fit there. He's also a great pick and roll defender. And I think he's going to be good on the other side of the ball. He is a bit inconsistent on defense, and so is his shooting. And I guess he's undersized, but I don't really care about that. The only thing is it makes you question what's going on with Clint Capella, because they basically already have a very similar player with him. They traded for him at the deadline last year while he was hurt, and it wasn't being talked about as this big injury or anything at the time. Like when he was playing for the Rockets, it was like he was questionable to play all the time. Like it wasn't like he was.
It didn't seem that serious.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, like when he gets on the Hawks, like he's not playing, and then there's people saying he might never play for the Hawks, and I was like, what is that? Like, what's even going on there? I thought that was weird, and I was like, no, he'll eventually play. But this pick makes me wonder if he actually ever will. Maybe he'll be okay, or maybe they'll trade him. I don't know what's going to happen there, but it just made me question that. Either way, I like the pick just because of the fit in a vacuum. But I don't know what's going on with Capella, and that's the one.
Yeah, I mean, I think you start Okongwu. Like, I think if you're drafting a guy 6th overall, you start him. I could see Capella playing a role off the bench. I was saying last night watching the draft, I could see them playing him in a similar way to kind of how the Raptors used Gasol, where like when we're going up against a guy with, like, if they're playing the Sixers, for example, and Embiid is going to come in and they can't really play small with Collins and Okongwu, then throw Capella in the game to kind of shut Embiid down a little bit. And I don't think Capella's a bad player, but I think if you're investing the 6th overall pick in a center that is ready to go and he's ready to play right now, this is already a young team. Just fully commit to that. And Capella's not a part of your future, and Okongwu is. So I think you just give him the keys.
And just to add one more thing to Okongwu, there's not necessarily even the potential that he couldn't ever play with another big. In college at USC, while his 3-point percentage wasn't great, he was actually a very good a free throw shooter, which is tends to be very indicative of 3-point ability in the NBA. And he's in college, he showed some flashes of being able to be a threat from deep as well. So for a big man, there is an element of floor spacing that he can bring to the table that if it develops down the line, he could play in conjunction with another big man on the team.
Yeah, sure. I actually do agree with that. And it could be what they're thinking. I just don't love the idea of playing two bigs in 2021 NBA. At the same time, that's just I'm not really interested in that. Even though, like you were saying, with Okongwu has the potential to work in that system. I don't know. I think the best outcome, kind of like Jake was saying, is you just start Okongwu and move forward with that. It's a young team. If you can find a way to move Capella or just use him situationally on defense because he is a better defender than Okongwu.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think that's a possibility.
Yeah. Thanks, Jake. It's interesting because you're just kind of curious what the Hawks were thinking with the pick. Of course, they have belief in Wu, but it's just interesting. What are they thinking with Capella? What are they thinking with Collins? Collins is a great player, young as well. Clearly, they're trying to develop a young core. Their average age of their starting lineup must be 22 or 23 or 24, something so young like that, right? This is interesting. What were they thinking with Capella? Were they thinking ahead, we're going to draft a center, we already have our eyes on Okongwu? Or were they thinking was Capella just someone available but yeah, so talking about the next pick,
Dad,
Hey.
you wanna play ball outside?
Son, I'm working. Fuck off. Okay, get out of here. Yeah. Sorry, that was my kid. He's trying to play ball with me. His name's Ranks. Dumbass. Okay. Yeah. So back to work. Sorry about that, guys. For
No
the
worries.
interruption. Yeah. I don't know. It's cold outside. I don't know why he even wants to play ball, but yeah. 7th pick, Pistons. Very interesting team in the draft. I'm sure we'll have lots of Piston talks later. Killian Hayes, point guard. Love this pick. 6'5", super crafty, great pick and roll player. Played overseas. He's a playmaker, transition guy, huge upside. He gets a lot of comparisons to D'Angelo Russell. I think we like D'Angelo Russell here on the podcast. Yeah, big D'Lo guys here. But yeah, so love the pick. Killian Hayes is really, really, really cool player. He kind of shot, not amazing from 3, but he did show flashes of like great step backs. He's also a lefty, kind of looks like James Harden, those lefty 3-pointer step backs, things at times. But just like Kale mentioned previously, free throw is a better indicator for some reason. I think it's mainly something to do with about just form mechanics and how you can develop that over time. The man shot 88% from the line. That is great. So clearly there is a lot of room for improvement for him to become a perimeter threat, and also like the fit with the Pistons. They didn't have kind of this guy that they could just give the ball to, run the team. And I think Killian Hayes just fits in perfectly with that team. And also, as we have mentioned previously, the East, there is some space for teams to make the playoffs. So if Killian Hayes really shines, it could be this year. And definitely the Pistons have a good pick with him to build in the future. And also this draft is so interesting. Like Killian Hayes, another year, if we just saw him play more, he could have been in the top 3, or he could have not even been in the top 10 at all. Like it's just a weird draft year. And I just like Killian Hayes for the Pistons. I think, I like the pick.
Yeah,
I like it a lot.
I completely agree. Killian Hayes, especially for a team like Detroit, like you said, it's sort of a similar situation to the Hornets. They didn't have that dynamic offensive player that could turn into a star for them.
No,
and
for real.
I think in a regular year where teams were able to, like, for example, like go overseas to France to evaluate Killian Hayes in person, I think there's a potential that he could have been one of the top picks in this draft.
Exactly.
Like, he's a phenomenal offensive player, and I think the Pistons got a steal here.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And he works perfectly for Detroit because
This was my favorite pick.
Yeah, they need someone to run the team. Like, who's running the team in Detroit? Nobody, right? They have old Blake Griffin, they have old Derrick Rose, and they traded Luke Kennard. And so now they're in a situation where we'll get to this in a little bit with the Pistons.
Yeah.
They blew it up, really. Like, their whole team is young. They're trying to basically almost, I just had this thought now, but it kind of reminds me of kind of what Atlanta is doing. Like, getting yourself a point guard that just runs the whole show and then surrounding him with just like wings and good players. I love the Killian Hayes pick. It's my second favorite pick of the draft. My other one's coming later, but yeah, I love the pick. Great choice.
All right, who's at 8?
I'm at 8. And at 8, we have Obi Toppin to the New York Knicks.
Yeah, like we said,
Sorry. So at first, this was a pick that I was a little bit confused about when it initially happened. For a team that just signed a young power forward in Julius Randle to a near max deal in this offseason, I found this move to be a little bit surprising. But like, the more that I think about it, the more that I think that this is a great pick for the Knicks. And that's because the NBA, it's a star-based league, and in such a weird draft, the Knicks took who they thought was the best player available. And I think they got a great player out of it. He's a dynamic athlete. He has incredible leaping ability, and he can impact the game by playing above the rim. At Dayton, he was even an efficient shooter from both inside and effective from outside. He shot nearly 42% from 3 at Dayton, and as a power forward, he also shows some surprising abilities as a playmaker. Let me preface this by saying, like, I think the Knicks, while I like this pick, I think they would have been better off trying to draft like a franchise guard like Hayes or Halliburton, but obviously Hayes was taken already. I still think that they got a dynamic offensive weapon, and you can't really go wrong with Obi Toppin at this pick.
It is a little interesting what the Knicks were thinking. I do agree with you. Like, obviously they liked him, and I think they were kind of narrowing in on him before the draft. It wasn't like a last minute thing. But it's just, I feel like the Knicks could have gone somewhere else. I saw Stephen A. Smith freaking just rambling about how he doesn't like the pick and Halliburton. I'm not on that wave. I think it's a fine, decent pick, and I think the man has a lot of potential. But I'm just wondering where they were going with it. Like, they have Randall, right? So is he going to play center? Is he going to play small forward? Is he going to play behind Randall? Is Randall going to play behind him? Like, they're paying Randall a lot of money, right?
Yeah, they are.
They are. But I do like it with who's the man they just drafted? How am I forgetting his name? RJ Barrett.
Yeah.
I like the idea of having these young guys together, a guard player and a forward. So I definitely like that. But
that's also the same reason that I'm an Obi Toppin fan.
Yeah.
Let me just say that. Like, I think he's a great player. Like, I watched him at Dayton a little bit, and he took like this like smaller school and he made them one of the better teams in the country. Like, he's lights out offensively. But because of what you were just saying, like, that's why I think it's weird that they didn't take Halliburton, because I think especially just from like what we've seen from RJ, getting a guy like Halliburton who can RJ can kind of dish it off to him, then they can be that 1-2 combo at guard, and to kind of get the ball out of RJ's hands a little bit when he doesn't have anything going. I thought it was weird that they didn't take a guard. Like, I was convinced they were going to take Halliburton here, but at the same time, I don't hate the Obi Toppin.
No, I agree.
And one thing with the Obi Toppin pick as well is that they could, now this would be a big lineup, but they could play Obi Toppin at small forward, just as a big wing, and then play Randall and then Mitchell Robinson at center. That lineup is really big and really clunky, and I don't really know how it would really fit together. But I mean, if you're planning on starting Mitchell Robinson, which you should be doing if you're the New York Knicks, and then you're going to start Randall, who you're paying a max contract, you kind of got to find a spot for this guy, right? So maybe small forward is that spot, but he's a natural power forward. So
I was thinking that as well, but it's like, it almost, like, in my opinion, it doesn't really fit together with Obi Toppin at small forward in like an actual like game, because even though he's like he's a great athlete, he's not actually very quick. So I feel like there's like a lot of like smaller players, like they'd be able to take advantage of like having a slower natural power forward playing small. So like, it's going to be interesting to find like how they try to work him in at his natural position, because he's definitely a very talented player, but it wasn't a positional fit. It was a completely just case of just a team taking the best player available.
Yeah, and the last thing that I want to add is that he also has a lot to work to do defensively. So if they are going to play him as small forward, he could get just cooked by a lot of the like better small forwards in the NBA. So that's just something to keep in mind too.
It's such a stacked position. The man's going to be after defending like now Durant, LeBron, Kawhi. It's just like, it's going to be tough for him.
And maybe that's where his size comes in handy. But
I think the ideal situation is they just somehow get rid of Julius Randle.
Yeah,
I agree. And just stop fucking around with Taj Gibson and
the
future.
Like, this is the last thing I even want to say about it. Even it's very off topic, but even signing Julius Randle was stupid anyways. Like, you're not doing anything signing Julius Randle. Like,
we wanted a star to sell jerseys.
We could do a whole video just about the New York Knicks, because like
they
could have a full video just about them and themselves.
Yeah, about them being stupid.
I think we're on number 9 now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so my pick of the draft is Denny Avdija or I'm going to butcher his last name, but Denny.
Denny.
To the Washington Wizards at pick number 9. Small forward, 6'9", 215. This is one of my favorite players in the draft. Aside from Killian Hayes, Denny is going to be a superstar. I love this pick. He's incredibly young. He has incredibly high potential. He started in the EuroLeague since he was 16. He played for this team called Tel Aviv in Israel, and they are considered the New York Knicks of Israel. So he's had big game time pressure for a lot of his life. He knows how to win. He's a great passer. He's the best small forward in this class, in my opinion. I think this is the only player, as I was saying earlier, that the Cavaliers should have picked rather than Okoro. is Denny. He's an efficient shooter. He's a leader. He's versatile between the 3 and the 4 as well. Like, he has the body type that he could switch between those two positions. He's versatile. He's defensively tough. He's determined on the glass. He's an incredible playmaker. And most importantly, Washington needed a guy like this. They needed a great wing player to fit in beside Beal. They need a guy who can score. I mean, if you know Bradley Beal from last season, he was just had the entire team on his back. John Wall hasn't played in like 2 full years. They need to start moving towards the future. And they already have a lot of good bigs. Get Denny, put him in there. Great pick. I love this pick. The only con of this is that he's had a bit of recent struggle with his jumper. But overall, I think this guy's floor, like this guy's NBA floor, is Kelly Oubre. I think that's like worst case scenario. He's like a Kelly Oubre like player, but I think he has so much more potential than that. And I think it's at number 9, they got to steal. One last little thing. Denny has been being scouted by the Wizards since he was 16, which is just something kind of cool to keep in mind. They were going to Israel to watch him play. So
That's very cool.
They got their guy, and I hope he works out because I'm a big Denny fan.
And just building on that too, it's like when you're talking about his NBA floor. Like, this is a guy who's been playing against men since he was 16 years old. This isn't a player who's like been playing in high school and plays it in college for 1 year and then gets drafted, who's been the best player on the floor his entire life and just like physically dominant over everybody.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy who, since he was a young teenager, has been playing against grown men. And I think like when we look, like Luka's the sort of like pinnacle
Clear example.
of this.
Yeah.
The pinnacle of this, like not a great example because Luka's like a generational superstar.
Yeah. You're
But
right.
it's a similar concept in that when a guy is playing in Europe for multiple years from a young age versus playing in college, he needs to develop a lot more of those fundamentals that are just going to make him an NBA ready prospect right away. And I think that's a very valuable thing for the Bulls to get at this pick.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like players that have just played in that kind of competition, like you were saying, just big guys, it's like they just come in way, I feel like, more refined, more ready. It's like what you were saying, like when you watch videos of, I mean, obviously Zion's another exception because he's fantastic. He'll be fantastic this year as well. But you watch Zion play against high schoolers. I mean, you see that one viral video of the little like 5'6" white kid guarding Zion in high school. It's like these were the people Zion was playing against for the majority of his life. You know what I mean? And then it's like, then there's this 16-year-old who is balling against men. So it's like, there's a clear refinement that this man's going to come in and going to be ready to play and ready to be bodied, ready to take contact, things like that, you know?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I like the pick.
I like it as well. And so there he is. He's back to do the number 10 pick. I believe he can hear us.
Lukey? Hello?
Technical difficulties here. Lucas lagged out.
I'll just say about the Denny Avdia pick before. I want to echo Jake on the fit. There's not many higher needs for Washington than what they got with Denny Avdia. I just think that's a perfect fit. Like I'm not the biggest Rui guy. I don't know. I think next to Beal, that's a perfect guy to just fit in there.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And also with Washington, oh look, there's 2 of our guys on one screen now. Lukey, it's your turn, bro. So come off mute and deliver the 10th pick.
All right. Figured out the technical issues just in time to talk about the Phoenix Suns a little bit here. So I think the Phoenix Suns may have stretched a little bit for Jalen Smith at 10. However, I think they addressed the only position that they really should have been looking at this position of the draft. They took 6'10" power forward Jalen Smith out of Maryland. He was selected a little bit higher than the previous rankings had him at, but it addresses a significant need for a strong 4 for the Suns. He's a versatile scorer and a great rebounder. This gives the Suns another shooting option to take pressure off of Devin Booker and Chris Paul. as well. He's also an elite shot blocker who slots in well with Phoenix's front court alongside DeAndre Ayton. So I like the pick for the Phoenix Suns. Not a flashy pick, but definitely a solid pick that addresses their most glaring hole in their roster for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I think this pick, it also provides an interesting dynamic next to DeAndre Ayton too, for like one in terms of floor spacing, because Jalen Smith has been he's been shown in college, like he's a very good 3-point shooter for a big.
Mm-hmm.
And also he fills almost like a little bit of a rim protecting hole, because DeAndre Ayton, he's been okay, but in a way there's been concerns about his intensity on the glass and like his actual ability as a rim defender against elite centers. And that's one aspect where Jalen Smith is very strong. He has a very high defensive IQ, and this makes him able to read when guys are driving the rim, to be a very effective shot blocker. So I think that that tandem in the front court will be a very good thing for both of the players.
And having a big that can be a good perimeter shooter is really good for floor spacing, and for players like Devin Booker and Chris Paul too, who also will have some of the best perimeter defenders on them throughout most of the game. But now if you have a third option for that, it opens up a lot of options for the Suns.
That's a cool team. The Suns are interesting this year.
I like the Suns. I'm in on the Suns.
I'm in on the Suns as well. I like what they've done. Was that the 11th pick?